Jackie. Hi, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming to the Ventilation for Apartment Buildings workshop. Just before we start, the City of Ryde would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Wadawurrung clan of the Turung Nation. The City of Ryde would also like to pay respects to the elders both past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to the other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present. So I'll hand over to Brent Clark from Wattblock, who will be presenting today the ventilation for apartment buildings, and we hope you can find something that you're able to use in your apartment building. So I'll hand over to Brent now.
Thanks, Bonnie, and welcome everyone to ventilation for apartment buildings, one of the driest areas in Strata, and that's what we're going to be tackling tonight. This is one of 4 webinars that are being sponsored by Ryde City Council. So we've previously had lighting and solar, and next week there is hot water for apartment buildings. So be sure to rejoin us again for that one. But the one tonight, ventilation for apartment buildings, this is actually the most important of the 4 seminars from a health perspective, because we're going to touch on coronavirus tonight. So without any further ado, we'll get into the presentation. So a few things that we're going to be covering tonight. How does ventilation fit into sustainability in apartment buildings? Why might we want to upgrade ventilation? We'll go through some barriers, opportunities. We'll look at about 5 different ventilation areas in your apartment buildings and cover a few ventilation tips before we take some questions. So throughout the initial presentation, that'll probably take about 30 minutes, if you can just write your questions into the chat box, and then following the presentation, Bonnie will read those out, and we'll do our best to cover those questions for you at that point in time. So first of all, sustainability in apartment buildings can refer to a wide range of energy, water and waste measures. It can also encompass new areas like solar, batteries and electric vehicle charging. According to the recent National Strata Insights report, there are 340,000 apartment buildings across Australia, housing 2.2 million people, representing 15% of households, with an insured value of those strata buildings exceeding $1.1 trillion. And in some local council areas, such as Ryde City Council, more than 50% of people in the local government area are living in apartment dwellings. So it's important that as the apartment buildings continue to get constructed and become more prevalent form of housing, that they all begin to resemble the picture that we see on the screen here tonight. So why upgrade ventilation in apartment buildings? Well, first of all, if we look at those apartment buildings as a group, they're actually consuming $1.7 billion of electricity each year. And there's a great opportunity for apartment buildings to actually reduce the electricity consumption, which in turn will reduce carbon emissions. Now, saving power also saves on electricity bills, which are paid by the owner's corporation or the body corporate. Tonight, we'll use both of those terms interchangeably. When it comes to ventilation, there is an opportunity to improve the health of residents within an apartment complex. And so we will touch on that. We'll actually start with that and then look at more of the energy saving opportunities as we move through the webinar. So first we'll just jump up to Hong Kong, and we've got a case study here of Hong Mei House. Now, why we're talking about this is 5 residents on different floors contracted coronavirus. And the building's got video camera footage to show that the people that contracted the coronavirus in this apartment block never actually came into physical contact with each other, yet they were 10 floors apart where they were living. And so the theory of how coronavirus spread through this apartment block, obviously it can't be confirmed, but is via airborne transmission through a leaking exhaust fan, as the apartments were stacked vertically underneath each other, and there was an exhaust fan that went up the side of the apartments where people contracted coronavirus. So this building had to be evacuated for deep cleaning. So one of the things we're just going to have a look at is keeping ventilation systems in good working order, perhaps refreshing ventilation ducting, or making sure that you're having maintenance applied to the ventilation systems can be something that can help to create a more sustainable apartment block for you to live in. Secondly, we'll just go back to 2003 and we'll have another look at this case study of Amoy Gardens. Now, in this complex up in Hong Kong, there were 300 confirmed cases of SARS. Now, the method of transmission of the SARS virus throughout this apartment complex was believed to be through the wastewater plumbing system. So if you have U-bends and S-bends in your apartments, and I'll just give you a couple of ideas. I mean, obviously you've got them in the toilet, but also the floor waste, which might be in the middle of the bathroom, or the floor waste that might be in the laundry. Sometimes if there's no water in the S-bends or U-bends, air can actually pass from one unit to another through the wastewater plumbing system. And if, for example, you've got a bathroom extraction fan or a laundry extraction fan, that will actually suck air out of the waste plumbing system and up into the apartment. So this is one tip that you can take away from tonight if you're living in an apartment building, is you might want to boil some hot water in your kettle and tip it down those floor wastes in the laundry and the bathroom. Make sure that you flushed your toilets, that they're not running dry at the back. And also if you've got maybe a wash basin in the laundry that you never use, just turn the taps on and let some water run through that for a period of time. And this is something you can do as a routine, maybe every 2 weeks, just to improve the health inside your own individual apartment. So now we'll move on to some of the barriers to upgrading ventilation for body corporates. Now, first of all, we've got to mention that according to that National Strata Insights report, 48% of all the apartments in Australia are currently rented out, tenanted. And this means there are owner investors that are looking for a financial return from their investment property in the apartment complex. And their motivation might be different from an owner-occupier who's more concerned around the amenity of living in the block. Now, we know that there are communication difficulties in strata. There can be communication challenges between strata committee members, and residents, between residents and the strata manager. And some of our apartment blocks are fortunate to have also a facilities manager or building manager. So maintaining communication is a challenge across all these stakeholders. One tip that you could do is set up a WhatsApp group or another messenger group to help improve communication through all the parties in your building. Apathy has been a problem in our strata buildings, and sometimes maintenance requests take quite a long time to work their way through and get implemented. There's been a lack of information, and that's what this seminar sponsored by Ryde City Council is all about, to try and improve the knowledge around ventilation in our apartment buildings. A couple of other challenges. Sometimes strata buildings need access to finance, particularly if they've been fighting building defects. And there's also a trade-off between saving power and the amenity in the building. So we'll have a chat about that, maybe when we get to foyer ventilation. So the opportunity tonight, we're going to look at 5 different sections of our apartment buildings. We're not covering air conditioning today, which is usually only in the high-rise apartment buildings in Australia. When I say a central air conditioning plan, there may be some apartment blocks that have a mix of air conditioning and ventilation, but today we'll just focus on the 5 areas of ventilation which are the most common across the typical apartment buildings in the Ryde City Council area. So car park ventilation, foyer ventilation, garbage room or garbage chute ventilation, potentially bathroom or kitchen common exhaust stacks, and fire stairs pressurization. Now, these are not the only places that you might find ventilation in your apartment building. It might be in a garbage compactor room, a comms room, electricity switch room, hydraulic room, fire control room, or in an indoor pool area as well. So we'll jump in and we'll have a look at 5 different ventilation uses in strata. If anyone's interested, this is a picture of one of the ventilation fans in Sydney with one of the best views. It's on top of a tower out at Homebush in Sydney Olympic Park. So first, we'll look at Carpark carbon monoxide ventilation fans. Now, there's strict regulations that these need to be in underground car parks that are not naturally ventilated. And basically, in some older strata buildings, you might find one of these fans still running 24/7, 365 days a year. To give you an idea, if you were to do that, it'd probably cost you about $6,000 worth of electricity. So it's definitely something that you don't want to occur. Most of the strata buildings have a timer on the car park carbon monoxide ventilation fan that'll see it run maybe for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening, usually coinciding with when vehicles are leaving and re-entering the building after the workday. However, it's not necessary to have the 2 hours in the morning and the 2 hours in the evening. You could just have 4 hours of runtime to do a complete flush, which is what you're aiming for, of the air in the basement car park every 24 hours. Now, a great project for people that might have a car park carbon monoxide fan running on a timer, 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening, could be to retrofit carbon monoxide sensors into the car park area. Now, what this would do is the sensor will only notify the car park fan to run when it detects a sufficient buildup in carbon monoxide in the basement car park. So to give you an example, if you were in, say, an apartment block of 40 units with maybe 2 levels of basement car park, using a carbon monoxide sensor system, you might only have the car park fan running for 15 minutes or 30 minutes every 2 weeks, rather than 4 hours per day. And that would still meet the compliance that you need in terms of keeping the car park area as a safe environment for people to breathe in, but it would also save quite a bit of energy. And to give you an idea, to install carbon monoxide sensors, it might cost $1,800 for each sensor, and they might have to be located maybe 25 metres apart in the car park area. However, the New South Wales government has what's called the New South Wales Energy Savings Scheme, which is an incentive scheme for people that are going to formally do a project that saves energy. And this project can be eligible for energy saving certificates under the New South Wales Energy Savings Scheme. Now, one step better than putting carbon monoxide sensors on a ducted car park ventilation system is to actually remove all the ducting from the car park areas and replace it with jet vent systems. So if you've driven through the Sydney Harbour Tunnel, or next time you're driving through, have a look in the top right-hand side as you go through. There's a whole lot of fans, and basically they blow carbon monoxide from one fan to another down the line to push the carbon monoxide out of the Sydney Harbour Tunnel. And this is also possible in a residential strata building. So this is installed at 308 Canterbury Road, Bankstown. And I've got a diagram to show you what it can look like on the next slide. So basically, using a jet vent system, you install these jet vent units at distances throughout the car park. The throw pattern of their bursts of air needs to be strong enough to reach to the next fan, so the next fan can then blow it and then out of perhaps a car park entrance. You'll need approximately 5 newtons of thrust per 100 square meters of car park floor area. And you want the jet vents to sort of work along the bottom of the slab, and also not to be positioned too low that they create interference with the cars that might be parked in the car park area. So next, we'll move on to foyer ventilation. Now, this is an area that's got a little bit more attention since coronavirus came out. Prior to coronavirus being something that we had to manage in our apartment buildings, people were just simply looking for energy savings from the foyer ventilation systems. Now, quite often when you walked into the ground floor of an apartment building, you would hear a noise which a lot of people just assume to be an air conditioning unit, but it's actually just a fan motor getting air from outside the building and pushing it through the foyer and each of the lift lobbies on the way up the apartment building. So this is a supply fan. One of the tricks to save energy was to put a timer on this supply fan. So maybe it only works during the daylight hours for 12 hours. And that simply saves you half of the energy costs of running this fan. Keep in mind, if you've got an older fan, and in an apartment building recently, we came across a fan that was 40 years old and had been continuing to run for that time. If you put a timer on a fan that old, it's likely to short out after a short period of time of having it stop-start each day. So you might actually want to upgrade a very old ventilation fan and put it on a timer at the same time. So a typical cost, my building that I live in has done this project twice in the last 5 years, and maybe we spend about $2,000 to $3,000 on a new fan, and it was about $180 for an electrician to put a timer and fit that to the foyer ventilation system. Next, we'll move on to garbage chute and the garbage room ventilation. Now, This is a real photo of a garbage extraction fan from an apartment building in Gerrard Street in North Sydney. Now, if any fan in your apartment building looks like this, it's probably original from the 1970s when your apartment block was originally built, and it's time to give it an upgrade. Now, you can replace these fans with what's called an eco fan or a variable speed drive, sometimes referred to as a VSD. Effectively, a fan that will soft start and build up to a faster speed and not run at the same speed all of the time. Now, one other thing though, just to keep in mind is if, for example, you've got a setup in your apartment building where you might have a bin room, maybe in the car park area, and you did have an extraction fan extracting out the bad smells from that garbage room. One alternative that can save some energy is to actually turn off that garbage room ventilation fan entirely and just increase the bin disinfecting cycle that's done by your cleaning company that might come and clean your apartment building. So it can actually be cheaper to get the cleaners to disinfect the bins monthly than run garbage ventilation fans 24 hours a day. Next, we're going to have a look at the Trident building, which is at North Steyne in Manly. So this is typical of a higher rise apartment complex built in the 60s or the 70s. We've got an aerial view of the apartment building on the right, and we can see a number of ventilation fans sitting there on the roof. So this apartment complex doesn't have any central air conditioning. It's just got a set of ventilation fans. Now, looking at the aerial map, it might not be quite obvious what those ventilation fans are doing. So we'll jump in here and you can see the triangle in the middle represents the Trident building. And you can see that we've got ventilation stacks running through this apartment building with fans for toilets, bathrooms, and kitchen and laundry for the different units. And these vertical shafts run top to bottom through the building. There are also two larger fans marked in green, which are the fire stairs pressurization fans for two fire escapes that run top to bottom of this building. Now, we first had a look at this building about 5 years ago, trying to work out a more economic way of ventilating this building. And it's actually taken about 5 years since the project was initially considered for this building to start moving down the step of the ventilation system upgrade. Now, this building is very much like if you've stayed in an older hotel, maybe on the Gold Coast, and you're up near the top of the building, you can sometimes hear the fan noise sucking out of the bathroom continually, 24 hours a day. So this building is of the same mould as those Gold Coast hotels. And the noise from those extraction fans is actually decreasing the amenity of the people in the top, in the penthouses and the top 2 or 3 floors of the building. So in order to get a solution for a building like this, basically you want eco fans to be installed on the roof of the building, and you want some control gear to be installed in each of, say, the bathrooms through all of the floors of the building. So when I say control gear, for example, you might turn on the light switch as you enter the bathroom, and as well as turning on the light, that might send a signal to an eco fan running on the top of the building. The more people that are inside a bathroom in a particular vertical stack, the faster that eco fan will be running at any point in time. And you know, during the night time, it can go to an idle state or a very slow speed, saving energy and also decreasing that fan noise that people hear as it's sucking up the ducts in the building. Next, we'll just have a quick chat about stair pressurization fans. So these are found in buildings which are over 25 metres high. So the bulk of our apartment buildings in Australia are actually much lower than this. So 70% of our apartment buildings are 5 stories and under. So the average apartment block in Australia doesn't have stair pressurization fans. Some of the buildings that are constructed in the 70s, such as the Trident, might have these fans running continuously. In newer buildings, these will only activate when a fire is detected by the fire control system in the building. So we've got an example here where you've got a supply fan in the bottom right-hand corner that's sucking air from outside the building, pushing it up a corridor that's next to the fire stairs with grills that enter into the fire stairs area. And that's creating positive pressure in the fire stairs that if, for example, there's smoke from a fire on any of those floors, the smoke won't be entering through the fire door when people open the fire door to exit and go into the fire staircase. And you've got an exhaust fan on the top of this fire stairs here that's taking the air that's got the positive pressure out of the building. Now, I'll just make a quick note about fire safety in our apartment buildings. As you know, you have to lodge your fire compliance certificate with your local council every 12 months. That's when you have your smoke alarm test, and if you've got diesel generator for the fire equipment needs to be tested. Now, a lot of our strata buildings have been paying a lot of money for fire compliance, and there wasn't a formal certification for fire safety practitioners up until April this year. And a lot of the fire safety companies, their staff haven't completed the training at this point in time. So definitely Google for this New South Wales government document on selecting a competent fire safety practitioner, and then you'll know what to ask for, and you'll be able to separate out maybe the more compliant fire safety practitioners from those that haven't gone through the accreditation process at this point. A question that we often get asked is, if you've got a local bathroom extraction fan that might turn on when you turn on the light switch to go into your bathroom in your apartment block, whose responsibility is this to pay for a new one if it's faulty, breaking, not effective? Now, this is an extract from a document that's published by Strata Community Australia called Who's Responsible. They're currently updating this document, but a new version will be available soon. There's a link to Strata Plus is a Strata Manager which has it on their website, so you can get it there at the moment. Now, the exhaust fans in the bathroom can be O for owner responsibility or OC for owner's corporation responsibility. If it's mounted within structural cubic space, e.g. communal ducting or a false ceiling that might carry water pipes and electrical wires between your functional space, airspace of your apartment block and the next unit, then that fan is actually the owner's corporation's responsibility to replace, even though it's just local to your apartment and would be connected to your own electricity meter. And also fire retardant has to be put around these fans, often if they're replaced, and then recertified by a fire compliance officer. But that's a project that you may be able to even as a tenant living in an apartment block, you could contact your property manager to contact the strata about getting a new fan if it's located in that structural cubic space between the apartments. Another hack, if you're an owner-occupier, maybe you've got a bathroom ventilation fan and a light on the same switch, so they both operate. Now, if you're going in to the bathroom just to use the toilet but not using the shower, then you don't necessarily need the extraction fan to go on every time you just go in to use the toilet or the basin. So you may be able to ask your electrician to come in and actually separate the two circuits onto two different switches, and that way you can save a little bit of energy on your local apartment energy bill through not turning on the extraction fan each time. And it might be a more enjoyable experience because you don't have the noise of the fan coming on. What about if you've got an underground car park with a wet wall? So you can see some sandstone on the edge of the car park here. Sometimes you'll have water running down these wet walls in the car park area. That could be a trigger for you to increase the operating hours of a car park extraction fan, and that would remove the humidity from the car park area. So while that would use a little bit more energy, it would improve the amenity inside the car park area. In particular, if, for example, you had a car park area that has heat pumps blowing cold air out and maybe some condensation out into the car park area because they're used to heat a pool in your apartment building, then you might also want to increase the runtime of the ventilation fans in the car park. And we'll also just have a quick touch on dehumidifiers for indoor pool areas. So this is a photo of the kilns in Brookvale. So basically, you want to maintain a relative humidity level of between 50 and 60% as optimal for comfort and health. So you want to reduce bacteria and mold growth in these areas, particularly if you've got a heated pool. Now, you can change the set point across the seasons. So during winter, you might set the humidity at 50%. And during summer, when you've got higher temperatures, you can actually work with a 60% relative humidity in this area without having any condensation problems occurring. So you don't want to go below 50% relative humidity. And this is another area that obviously strata buildings are trying to sanitize, keep healthy during the coronavirus period that we're working to combat. If you're upgrading your fans that are on the roof of your apartment building, here we are at an apartment block at Cook Road near Centennial Park, not far from the Sydney Cricket Ground. It's a good idea to actually pay some extra money and get the ventilation fans removed off the roof and prevent the build-up of the ventilation fan graveyard on your strata building rooftop. And finally, this is a ventilation case study of quite a new building over in the Lane Cove area at Emerant Lane. Now, this is a building that already had carbon monoxide sensors operating on the exhaust fans, so there's not really any more savings to get there, but you can go and put timers on garbage exhaust fans, foyer exhaust fans, hydraulic services fans, comms room fan, the meter and fire services fans, and cut that the cost of running those ventilation systems in this apartment building by about 50%. So, you know, that's something to keep in mind, a very simple set of projects for your electrician to come in and do in your apartment building. Now, we've got to the end of the formal part of the session, so I'll just hand back over to Bonnie, and if you've got any questions, we're happy for you to put them into the chat box.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brent. And thank you for all who attended this evening, and for Brent for sharing your experience and expertise on ventilation in apartment buildings. This was the third of a 4-part series in our sustainability in apartment buildings. The next one will be next Tuesday, and it's on hot water. So that's available on Eventbrite if you're interested in attending that. 51% of the households in the city of Ryde live in apartment buildings, so it's a huge potential for energy saving, not just in individual apartments, but also across common areas. So we hope you'll be able to incorporate some of the tips you learned today in your apartment. The city of Ryde offers some other sustainability programs helping to build sustainable communities and reduce carbon footprint. These include Our Common Ground and the Home Waste Sustainability Advisory Service. We'll send some additional information on these in a follow-up email, which will include a recording of tonight's webinar. Is there any questions from anyone in the group that's listening? There's a chat bar down the bottom if you did have any questions, and just type your questions there. Doesn't look like we've got any questions today.
It looks like maybe we covered the entire area of ventilation in strata. So yeah, I would just like to thank everyone for joining us this evening. Thank Bonnie for co-hosting, and thanks to Ryde City Council for sponsoring this series. And be sure to join us next week for efficient hot water systems in apartment buildings.
Awesome. Thanks, Brent.
Thank you.
Oh, we do have a question. Can we have a copy of this deck?
Yes. So we're recording this workshop tonight, and it'll be put up on YouTube, and then you'll get a communication from Ryde City Council to follow up, and the people that weren't able to join us tonight will, that registered, will also get that communication as well. Okay, well, we'll finish up now, and thank you to everyone for joining us this evening, and we hope you have a good and safe evening in your apartment building. Thank you.
Thank you.